Ever wanted to take full control of your business, but the idea felt you or left you feeling a little bit scared? And today, my guest, I'm really excited for this. My guest is Gretchen Betts. She knows exactly what that feels like. She bought out her business partner to take full ownership of Magenta financial planning, and then went on to launch SheFinance that helps women feel more confident and clear about money. So today we are going to explore our theme for the year, what it takes to back yourself, build a business with heart, and create something that makes a real difference.
Welcome to PROpulsion, the weekly show for financial planners and advisors who want to build better, more successful businesses. I'm your host, Francois du Toit, and every week we dive into the practical strategies that matter, from growing your client base and improving your services to developing yourself and your team. Whether you're running your own practice or you're part of a larger firm, you are guaranteed to find actionable insights to help your business thrive. So with that, welcome, and let's get into today's episode.
So it is such a pleasure to welcome Gretchen Betts to PROpulsion Live today. Gretchen is the Managing Director of Magenta Financial Planning, a multi-award winning boutique firm in the UK, known for its value-based approach. And she's also the founder of SheFinance, a platform and workbook that's helping women all over the world feel more confident and in control of their money. And with more than 20 years in financial planning, Gretchen has become a respected voice for building businesses with purpose and for bringing heart, empathy, and clarity into the world of money. Gretchen, a warm welcome to the show. I'm looking forward to this.
Hi, Francois. Nice to see you again.
Fantastic. I would have preferred this to be in person, right? So it would have been really cool if we could sit around a little table, have some tea or coffee, and just have that kind of energy. That would have been really, really cool. Hey, but technology helps us make this work. So
Indeed. It's a little far just to go for a cup of coffee or tea, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. So let's get into it. I've got a long list of questions. So I'm going to see through how much of that we can get today. But I mean, you've been part of this profession now for a very long time. And I want to start sort of at the beginning. Most people here probably don't know you yet. And they're going to thank me later for introducing you, I'm pretty sure. So the first question I want to sort of ask you is just, I mean, there's so many different ways that one can go in this profession, right? And you decided to start your own firm. Was there sort of a moment where you thought, I can do this, but I can do this. Not only can I do this, but I can do this differently?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'd been working for a much larger wealth planning practice. So I'd sort of the early part of my career was in accountancy practice, and then I ended up in a kind of larger wealth management practice that had been a bit of a consolidation. So hundreds of advisors, and my business partner at the time and we launched Magenta together. We were both working at this firm, and we kind of sat there and went, this just feels wrong. We were, the clients maybe were happy enough, but we felt like we were having to, we were calm on the surface and paddling really hard underneath the surface to keep everything really good. And yeah, we just decided, there's got to be a better way than this. And that's why we launched Magenta. I think we wanted to be able to be agile. We wanted to be able to respond to clients quickly, be able to make decisions quickly. And, when you are in a smaller firm, you are able to do that in a lot more, kind of agile way. So that was probably why we knew we wanted to make something different.
And what was that thing that was missing, and you feel like that's a gap that we did for? What was that thing for you guys? Yeah,
I mean, I think, in the UK, the concept of financial planning rather than transactional advice has probably been here, kind of probably a good 10 years, maybe even a bit longer. But Julie, my business partner at the time, she was kind of one of the leaders of implementing cash flow forecasting into the UK. And I think that we knew that was what we needed to continue to be able to do. And lots of firms, they kind of say they're doing it, but they're not really doing it. They're not really doing lifestyle financial planning and thinking about it in that way. So I know a huge amount of your audience are going to be people who are doing it in that way, because the reason why we know one another is because we were part of Next Gen, and we that's the kind of firms that we're involved with. So we just wanted to be able to live true to the values that we believed in that were required in financial services, really, and moving away from that transactional. And I think the reality is, in kind of a larger conglomerate of companies, a lot of it is about asset grabbing, and we were just really uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, and Gretchen, the interesting thing is, I mean, I've worked in quite a few companies in my life, and you always see these values, and they're pretty much the same across the big corporates, bigger businesses. You find the same kind of wording and stories, and somewhere nice on a wall and all of that. But it's easy to put these words on a list. Even when we were looking at our values for our business, I say we, like I looked at them before they were we, there was I, and I looked at the values. And came up with a list of things, and I question them every single year to say, well, are these things that you can actually see in what we do? Because it's easy to say that these are the things that are important to you. So how do you make sure that the entire business lives the values, and what are those values that are really critically and important that you live by and that you run Magenta by?
Yeah, so I think what's really interesting about when we set up Magenta was we knew that so it was tell from the background and the name of the firm that we didn't want to fall into that blue corporate traditional financial kind of package. We spent a long time thinking about the name, and we didn't want to just call it after ourselves. We wanted something that was hopefully going to lead the way in our values. And the color magenta, the kind of psychology behind that color, is a lot around balance, compassion, confidence. It's a mix of blue and red, right? So it's got some fire and it's got some calm. So for me, I think what actually that's done, whilst that sounded nice at the start, what it's actually done is form part of almost everything that we do. So a lot of the values now, which we've honed over the years, we've now got 4 core values, which is confidence, clarity, creativity, and compassion. The team, interestingly, compassion is the one that they absolutely resonate with. So they want to know that we're compassionate to clients, and they want to know that we're also compassionate to one another. And I think that if you asked the team which one was their kind of drive, that would be it. The others are really important because we want people to feel confident in our advice. We want our team and the people who are delivering advice to feel confident in their ability. And I think, clarity for me around the way that the language that we use as advisors, trying to ensure that clients really understand that we're as jargon free as possible. Those things are really important to us. And then creativity, basically for me, is the crux of anything I do. So for me, I want to know that we're using creativity to think of best ways to solve problems. I don't see, you know me, Francois, I am also art creative. That is kind of my background. But for me, actually, in the business, it's about finding the best solutions for the things that we're dealing with clients. And that's where creativity comes into our roles. So, it's absolutely key to everything that we live and breathe. And I hope that anyone who visited the website or who saw me on social media or hears me speak on anything can kind of feel that come through, because now I think it's just it's in me, and it's certainly, in the business.
And just quickly, a side question, Gretchen, on the going back to you said that the team resonates quite strongly with the compassion value. How do you, like when you are recruiting, like how do you ensure that fit? Because I mean that's very important, right? I mean, if I would assume that you wouldn't want to bring somebody into this that doesn't resonate with the values, doesn't resonate with compassion specifically, if that is the main driver for the team as a whole. how do you ensure that alignment when you are recruiting?
I mean, it's difficult, right? We've made mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes with hiring. And over the sort of 9-10 years of doing this now, as Magenta anyway, I've certainly made mistakes. I think we're clearer now on what that looks like and what we expect. And I think empathy is such a massive part of delivering high quality financial advice. That you need to ensure as far as possible that those team members, depending on what role they're doing, obviously, but can kind of live and breathe the same values. How I've tried so many times. I've done like personality tests with interviewees. I've done all sorts. The reality is you kind of have to just go on a little bit of guts, I think, and also be clear and share that those values are absolutely resonant. We also have various other things that we do throughout the year. So we have obviously annual appraisals, and we have also we run a star of the quarter with the team. So they can kind of win a star of the quarter nomination and get a day off, extra day off. And those things then, therefore, we judge them on those 4 values. So we try and bring it into everything that we're doing. Yeah. But I don't have the perfect recruitment solution for anyone. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, there's lots that one can do to enhance your chances, but until that person starts, you don't really know, right? It's still a little bit that gut thing. I think is ultimately the thing you need to trust. But thanks for all of that, Gretchen. So the one thing that I want to get into with you is that you did a management buyout. You were referring to your partner earlier.
Yeah,
that was part of the business when you started. And then at some point you decided that you're going to buy them out, if I've got my facts correct. And I think one thing, what struck me quite strongly when you and I had a conversation about something else the other day was that we always speak about succession from the person exiting the business's perspective, but we hardly ever, I've never been part of a conversation where we speak about the person taking over from their perspective. And this is sort of what I really want to get into as well with you, because you were on that side. You were the one staying and they were the one leaving. And we're now done with people leaving. Today I want to talk about the person staying and what was that entire process like. So this is sort of what I want to get into a little bit. And I think to decide to buy somebody out and having to maybe borrow money, and all of that, that's a big decision, right? So what were the feelings and the thoughts and things at the time as you had to make that decision, and maybe just tell us a little bit about what led to that and then what that was like for you to take that step.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, setting up a business itself, there was definitely, that leap and that kind of I think before I'd done that, before we set up Magenta, I don't know that I'd taken many risks in life, to be honest. I think I'd been in an employed role and, but I think that was a big step. And then what happened was we ran Magenta for 4 years, 3 to 4 years, and then the pandemic hit. And I always knew that Julie was probably, when we first started, she was probably thinking 10 years, maybe. So probably we'd be getting to the stage now by the time, sort of now that she would have decided she'd had enough. But the pandemic just changed everything. As everybody knows, delivery of advice changed. We did so much more online. I believe skill set for delivering advice online is very different from face-to-face. And Julie just didn't really enjoy it. So she came to me and said, listen, I think I want to go earlier. I want to retire. Kind of threw me through through quite a loop. I would say there was probably quite a lot of anxiety and, I don't want to call it stress, but definitely like what's next. And there were several options. We kept going how we were, which at that point I owned 20% of the business and she owned 80%. Okay, so I could have kept making money, but she would have taken 80% of those profits, right? So the other option was to buy her out. Now, it was a large amount of money. By that point, the business was valued at quite a lot. And even if we did decide on what I would call a friendly deal, right? An internal deal rather than external, it still was a lot of money. And so we agreed. I kind of went, what do I do? And I thought, if I can get the money, if I can get the funding, I need to do this, because I couldn't stomach working and paying 80% of my efforts to someone else. That's the reality of it. So yeah, I managed to get the funding. It was scary, but I think the key thing there is knowing your numbers, because the one thing with Magenta was very profitable, is still very profitable. I knew that we were going to be able to afford the debt. Okay. However, I would just add to everyone listening that, of course, this happened in kind of after the first lockdown, before the second lockdown. So February 2021. And we had interest rates. I think my original interest rate on the loan was like 8%, and it went up to almost double. Right, so it's a variable rate. So everything is costing me loads more than I was intending, and that's pretty scary. But actually, because we knew our numbers, we scraped through those years of when it was really painful, and now we're way into it. I think we've got like a year left on that loan, and it doesn't keep me up at night, but there were a few periods where it did.
And what was sort of the main challenge for you from that? Because I think, when people are in a business, there's sometimes feelings around, yes, but I helped build it. I've been bought, now I've got to buy out, or I've got to go find funding, or you want to charge me or you want me to pay a market-related value to this. However, I've also sacrificed, I've also contributed, I've also done all this stuff. So how did you deal with all of that? And I think that's really, if I listen to what a lot of people are saying, like especially people who are the successee of a specific plan, they often feel like, but why should I pay for this, etc., or why should I pay that market-related rate, as I said. So just maybe your thinking around that, and sort of, did you go through any of those motions, or was it just like, well, this is just another business transaction, got to get it done? Just maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think there's no getting away that it's emotional, right? It's emotional. We're invested. We love our company. We've maybe, contributed, built it in a different way. We might not have put all the money in originally, all of those things. I think for me, yeah, there was feelings like that, but I think that Julie and I fell on a pretty decent deal. They say like the best deal is that every party is slightly uncomfortable. The party exiting wishes they had a little bit more money, and the party buying feels like they're overpaying, right? You've got to settle at some point. I think honesty around it, open conversations, but also I hear so many of these succession plans fall down because of greed. And that's on both parts. That's on the exiting partner thinking that everything should be worth more, and it's on the successor thinking they should get it for cheap, right? Brett Davidson, who's a UK kind of consultant, of a lot of work in financial services, has a great thing where he's got like a letter. So it's like a letter from the successor, letter from the leaver. And I think that's just available on his website somewhere. And it's just brilliant because it just kind of makes you think about the other person's view, right? If you're in this situation where you're thinking, oh my God, I feel like I'm being hard done by, I think it's always really important to put yourself in those other people's shoes. So, listen, Julie and I, as I said, we'd always had a really open relationship about stuff. And yeah, we had to have some awkward conversations. She wanted me to continue to pay her, private medical insurance after she'd left for XYZ. And I said no. And, things like that. There were conversations, but I don't feel hard done by because, yes, I'd contributed, but ultimately that business probably wouldn't have been there had Julie not said, shall we do this? She funded quite a lot of the upfront stuff when we first started. So everyone's situation is going to be different.
And If you are able to talk about it, then it's fine. If you can't, then just tell me. But the question I want to ask is like, how was the deal sort of structured in the sense of not numbers, but just sort of, was it all, did you borrow the full amount and then pay her and that was it? Or was there sort of a combination of borrowing money and profit sharing and for a specific period of time? What was the main sort of structure of that deal?
Sure, yeah, I can share that. I mean, I think it's, we're far enough down into it. From recollection, I borrowed basically the initial consideration. So I borrowed enough to give Julie 50% of our agreed amount upfront, and she walked away with that. And the debt is within the company, within a holding company, because in the UK, the FCA, you can't have loads of debt in your trading company. So there's lots of different things that you have to do. But the debt then was in the company. And then what we agreed was the deferred consideration. Basically, it isn't profit share because she's no longer a shareholder, but she had several years of deferred consideration where I made payments, and we agreed those up front. And we actually repaid her quicker than the deferred period because so it's interesting. You said to me earlier, what was it like being the successor? In the deal, it was fine. But what I found really hard was afterwards. So Julie and I had always had a really good professional relationship and spent a lot of time together personally. But like, it's almost as soon as financial planning was removed from her life, we didn't have a huge amount in common. So when we'd meet up, she'd still kind of want to know what was going on, but I was like reluctant to share everything. And ultimately I just felt beholden because I'd got that money that I kind of had to keep her, it's a difficult one, right? So Julie and I are still in contact and we meet up and we have a very good relationship, but it is different from how it was. And so I was keen to repay her as quickly as possible so that I could just kind of be free of that feeling. And that was me. That was totally me. There was nothing coming from Julie. It's just how I felt personally. And so I do think when we think about these kind of things, you've got to think about the tail end of it. How long are you going to be tied to this other person or be indebted? You do owe this other person money. I was almost better off. I was almost happier with the other debt than the deferred consideration, which is very strange, but it's just psychologically how I felt.
Yeah, but it is also like, I think the one is a clean break and the other one is sort of a little bit of a noose around your neck until that's done, right? So so that's quite interesting. And what was the impact on my last question around this topic, but what was the impact on the team also when you were going through this? So the rest of the team that obviously worked with you in Magenta and still works with you, what was the impact on them? And was there anything from a leadership perspective that you sort of like learned through this process to say, well, not just the textbook stuff, but like what,
yeah,
with it, yeah, you get what I'm asking.
I think like when it was really tough as well with the interest rates, and bear in mind it was like the worst year for kind of trading as well. It was hard. I think they knew that we were under kind of stress with our kind of profit flow, inflows. And, I think all we did was we were just really open about it. The reality was that the business wouldn't have been the same had I not done this. Like we probably would have had to have sold the business to let Julie do what she wanted to do. So that would have been also very different. So I think they've always been on board because actually they know that this is how we've kept consistency. But we did have to make some tough decisions around spending and things like that. And now, or especially with the Julie situation and that deferred thing, what's really interesting is that a lot of the staff that I've got now didn't really know Julie that well. So a couple of them did work with her, but actually we've had some changes and we've got some different people. So I've got one lady who works with me who's worked with me for the whole of Magenta, but she'd previously worked with Julie for 15 years. So she's long standing. But she doesn't really have that. She doesn't really have that much connection with Julie now either. And I think that just proves that, we had a great professional connection. But Julie's too busy riding around the world on a motorbike now to bother that much with us. And she's loving her life and spending her money, which is great. Living the best life, living the kind of footsteps that were certainly doing what we say clients should do, right? So yeah, I think the team we're a different business now 4 years on than we were when Julie left. I think I lead slightly differently. Julie was more an authoritarian kind of leader, and I'm a much more of a collaborative leader. So I think everything has changed internally while still managing to deliver, the same advice. I had some really flattering comments in our last feedback from clients that they, really don't even notice any difference since Julie had left. And some of those clients have been with Julie for like 15 years. They'd followed us from the previous place. So, overall, I don't think it could have gone much better, but it hasn't been without really working on that to keep that consistency throughout.
So I think I lied. There's one more question I want to ask about this, and then we'll move on. I want to talk about what it's really like building. I want to talk a little bit about building business with heart, but let me first ask you just maybe this last question. If you were back there again today and you had to do this whole thing over again, or there's somebody in the audience at that point where they say, I've got to pull the trigger, I've got to do this, and they are the ones that are going to take over from somebody, they're not the one leaving. Mm-hmm. What would you say to them, or what would you do differently? What is the one thing you wish you did differently? Is there anything, or do you think, like, even though there were some challenges, you nailed it in that sense? Or is there something that you said, maybe I should have done this different? Anything like that you can?
Yeah. Say? Listen, I think overall it's gone, as well as it could have done. But I think, the psychological piece that I've already spoken about how I felt about the deferred consideration, which, by the way, was paid, the agreement was over 3 years, and I think we repaid it in 2 and a bit. 3 years is a long old time. And I hear people saying, oh, well, we're not going to borrow, we're just going to do a profit share for like 10 years and repay someone over a deferred period because we don't want to borrow the money. I think it becomes incredibly difficult, even if you've had an amazing relationship with that exiting partner. So I think I would be telling myself, to prepare myself for how I might feel about that, and probably being open about that. Julie stayed on for kind of working on a consultancy basis for a year because we felt that we probably needed a bit of consistency for, like, what if a client wasn't happy, or and also she did some of our marketing writing and stuff like that. Actually, then when I wanted to stop that payment, which, wasn't a huge amount of money, but was a little bit of extra that I felt I actually wanted to move forward with our marketing being different, that was probably a really not a difficult conversation to have because we hadn't been very specific about how long that would go on for. And then I had almost like, over lunch go, by the way, we're not going to need you to do this. I'm going to stop the payment, and you just try and do all that negotiation up front, be clear if that person's going to stay on in any kind of capacity, how long it's for, what price it's for, who has the right to stop it, can you stop it before you've the agreement, like let's say you agreed it for a year but after 6 months you try and build as much into the legal stuff as possible. And I think some of that we were a little bit like, well, we get on well, so it will all be fine, and we do still get on well, I want to reiterate, but those things you shouldn't have to worry about negotiating later on. So that would probably be my takeaway.
That's brilliant. So let's move on and chat a little bit more about Magenta as well. Like if I just look at you, I look at the background, I look at your website, like everything is just so so welcoming. And so when, as you said, I think the way you explained the color magenta was so there's a bit of fire, but there's also calm. It's so inviting and welcome. And I mean, like, I don't know your team, but I know you. And I mean, your personality also speaks of that. So it's really like there's this warmth around this. And I think people can really feel that, when they deal with you or visit the website or any of that. How do you build that kind of culture? Because there's got to be intent behind it, right? You had to be intentional about that. Is there like a training that you did? Is there a process that you created, or did you lead by example, or like how did you get to foster that culture in your business? Because I don't want to take up time with this, but because you go to two restaurants, same brand, same like a franchise kind of thing here in South Africa. And one is a fantastic experience and the waiters are happy and they really like welcoming and, acknowledge you and all that. And then the other one is just the absolute opposite. So I'm always curious, like, how does one get it right and the other one doesn't? So how do you?
Listen, I think, we all know that culture comes from the top, right? And you've got to lead by example and you've got to build it into everything. I'm one of those people who, like, I'll just make friends with someone on the bus stop, right? I'll probably meet anyone anywhere. And I've just got, I don't know what it is. People just want to say hi. I'll be at a checkout queue. Someone will talk to me. Like I've always been like that, even since I was a child. So I don't find that kind of stuff, I don't find hard. So hopefully, I think from a skill set as an advisor, I think, we all know that building trust is so vital and you have to do it bloody quickly. You have to do it in almost instantly, right? So you might have a 20-minute window in your meeting, because if you haven't done it in the first 20 minutes, they're not listening to you. They're just going to shut off. If you've done something that turns them off, and in the silly language, it'd be like gives them the ick, right? They're not listening to you. So for me, it's around every single stage before they meet us being consistent. So what I hate is when I look at a website and think, wow, that looks great, da la la la. And then when you meet the people, it's nothing like them. Or their language is not the same. There's no point in speaking on your website in a language that sounds, complex or sounds simple, but then when they meet you, you're complex, or vice versa. I think you've got to really think about that. And also bear in mind that, people spend like all of half, maybe 1 minute on a website. So it's all very well writing all this stuff, but they got to get it from the first kind of couple of paragraphs or in the team section or whatever it is the most popular page that you're on. So that's one of the things. Then I also think like authenticity around everything that you do. So, over the years, I've built up now, almost on every platform. You'll be, on podcasting, you'll be on YouTube. I've obviously written the SheFinance book. There's so many things. I want there to be consistency throughout, that what you see with me is what you get in all of those other spaces. And, listen, the rest of the team, we want that experience to be, if someone walks through the door, if it's a face-to-face meeting, that they're getting that same greeting and feeling comfortable, that the language that we send on confirmations or the language that we use on the telephone when we're answering phone calls all resonates with that overall kind of theme, that, we're friendly. We want it to feel like it's a warm hug when you come in. It's always the best compliment when a client says, uses that kind of language in their feedback. And for me, it's around consistency, because if you do it once, great. But if you do it consistently, people remember it.
Gretchen, so what is the one message you want to leave with, like everything we've spoken about, or even something that I should have asked that I probably haven't gotten around to ask you? Because there's still a lot on here. What message do you want to leave everyone with, considering they all do what you do in some way, or shape, or form? What would be your one wish for the profession in the next?
That's really interesting. We've spent a lot of time talking about the MBO and kind of succession. So I think it'd probably be around that. And some of the comments in the chat I can see are around, it being difficult to get that money. Thinking about the client book, and we've got an aging client bank potentially. I think our role is or roles as if you're a junior planner or if you're a younger planner, we need to be thinking about the age bank of our client, because we don't want to buy an age bank. We don't want to buy a bank, spend all this money and take all this risk if everyone is 80 or 70. Right. So thinking now, planning early, thinking about the type of business that people want to come into. And I'm not talking about attracting 20 or 30-year-olds, which, some advice firms, that's the kind of client that they want. They want to be in really young. For me, it would be, can you get client bank to be more in your 40s to 60s, right? They're the sweet spot. They've got some assets, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, I think the messaging is, if you think you want that succession, you've got to build the firm that you want to buy. It's not up to that exiting person. Your kind of future is in your hands. So how can you start to think about it being that firm of the future for you, that you would take the risk to buy into? And also be open about that. Maybe you don't start with doing a full management buyout. Maybe there's a small shareholding that person is willing to kind of give you experience with, and have those discussions around pricing and stuff like that. So I think it's just that there's no one size fits all, and risk is involved, but you have to take the initiative. They're not just going to give it to you on a plate. And that's probably my message.
No, it's really an interesting and complex and dynamic sort of situation, right? And I think every single situation is different, right? As much as you and I can sit here and talk about this, I have my views, you have your views, and you have your experience. Other people come from a completely different thing and see it differently. But I think it all starts with, how intentional are you and how clear are you around what it is that you want? And are you moving towards that? And are you having the conversations that drive you to that? And then you can figure out how later. But like, you first got to get on the same page wherever you are. Gretchen, massive thank you. It was really amazing. Thank you very much. I know you're an hour behind us, so you had to get up very early on your side of the pond. But luckily, we did do it before daylight saving, so it wasn't 2 hours; it was only an hour. But thank you so much. I've got goosebumps. I'm really, really thankful that you're here today.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Awesome. Have a fantastic one. If you want to connect with Gretchen and you want to get to know more about her, please, LinkedIn is the place, like there's no more point in sharing lots of stuff. And also go check out SheFinance if you want to learn more about that. Thank you very much. Fantastic. Thank you very much. That was a fantastic episode. And thank you for all the comments and all of that. Some interesting things that came through. And I do want to say I'm looking forward to next week's episode. Next week, we've got the Financial Plan of the Year finalists. We do that every single year. So all three of them will be here, and I will introduce them to you. I'll talk to them a little bit, and you can get to know them a little bit better. And then, so that's next week, Friday. And then on Monday, if I've got my facts right, on Monday evening, winner of that will be announced at the gala event. That's part of the FBI convention. So with that, I'm going to wish you a fantastic weekend. Enjoy. Thank you very much for being here. Please stay safe, be blessed, and prosper. Stay curious. Raise the bar. See you around. Love you lots.
Thanks for joining us on Propulsion. If you found value in today's episode, then there's plenty more where this came from. You can find all our previous episodes right here on the podcast, as well as on our YouTube channel. And talking about the YouTube channel, we go live every single Friday at 8 a.m. until 9 a.m. and we host many different guests, and we also talk about very interesting topics. And on the live show, there's also some incredible segments hosted by some of the most well-known and influential financial planning professionals. So you are most welcome to join us every single Friday. Put it in your diary and we will see you there. And on that note, also please do check out propulsion.co.za /community for all of the goodness and learn more about how you can become part of our amazing community and how that would benefit you, your business, and your career. So on that note, stay curious and keep raising the bar.